Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles people who are passionate about what they do for a living, what organization they belong to, or the community they are a part of. Here is your host, Dave Cunningham.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Food insecurity is a phrase that we hear more these days, particularly during this pandemic. Several organizations in this community are working hard on their own and together to make sure there are hamper items or cooked meals available to those who need them. In a previous episode several years ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with the previous executive director of the Partners in Mission Food Bank. Sandy Singers is now retired, and 2 years ago, he was replaced by our guest today. His name is Dan Irwin. Dan, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dave.
I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk with us about the food bank. And I want to start off by talking a little bit about how you got to the food bank. And I went through your resume, if you want to call it that, on LinkedIn,
Yes.
which gave me some bit of an idea of your background. And I'm looking through the stuff, and you start, about 25 years ago, and you go from one position to the next. And it seems to me that with each position, you are learning more skills. You are moving up the ladder, if you will, in terms of developing the direction you want to go to. And then my question to you, I guess, since most of what you did do is in the insurance industry, sales and service, that sort of thing, what sort of skills did you pick up along the way that you are now using in this job?
Yeah. It's my career isn't the normal career path to not-for-profit. That's for certain. I'm a little different that way. The skills I picked up along the lines were really around relationship building, and that is such an important piece of my past world in the world of insurance, and it's so important here. I've got relationships with staff, our volunteers, our donors. They're all very, very important to this organization.
So you've had 2 years on the job. You're now working in the nonprofit sector, as you mentioned, moving from the private sector. What challenges have you seen in making that transition?
I guess the biggest challenge is you're not pushing to make a profit anymore. It's not that same way. You're not chasing things quite that way. So it's nice that piece. Another big factor is I always felt I was helping people in my insurance career. So moving to this and helping people with the most basic need in life is really close to the heart. And everyone here, whether a staff, a volunteer, a donor, really, connects to that helping others. And that's a really heartwarming thing.
One of the things that you did do, which is out of the ordinary as well, is the business of being a volunteer with the organization and moving across the table to become an employee of the organization.
Yeah.
And I've had some experience with that in previous life, if you will, when I was on a board and we were interviewing a former volunteer who wanted the job of being the manager of the office. And so that has its challenges in that. So I'm wondering, what sort of challenges did you identify when you were applying for the job?
So I got involved with the food bank. It's always been one of my favorite charities. It's again, for me, it's really connecting, it's neighbor helping neighbor. And the food bank is just a conduit to help. There's donors and there's people who need help. So that's what I love about this place. So I started on the board of directors and then, got to fall in love with it more so. And then when Sandy announced his retirement, we were like, everyone was kind of a little bit shocked and like, okay, what are we going to do now? Someone mentioned that they thought I could do the job. And I said, I can't do that, this reason or that reason. They said, you sure? So then I got thinking about how important this place is to me. And then I gave Sandy a call and we went out to lunch and we just talked, what do you do? And kind of idea, so I could figure out if I could do it. The challenge was, as a board member, I had to stay out of the conversation. So anytime there was a conversation that was going to involve the executive director, I was either excused or didn't come to that meeting kind of idea, because I wanted to, and I told them there was no hard feelings if they chose someone else. I understood there's a lot of great qualified people out there, but I wanted to stay on my term on the board, and if I wasn't chosen, so I just kind of declared conflicts and left the room kind of during certain conversations and discussions, and to allow that to move forward.
How long was Sandy there?
Oh, Sandy was here a long time, 23 years and 18 years as the executive director. So long time, a real pillar in our community and the organization.
Big shoes to fill.
Yes. He used to say there's only size 9.
One thing about Sandy is because he, for those who don't know, Sandy has been a longtime performer.
Yes.
A singer who gets up in front of a crowd and talks to the crowd and does that with a lot of ease, whether or not he has butterflies or not, but he does do it and he does it well. So when it comes to talking to the media, he has that particular skill. Now, how do you feel about talking to the media? Is that something you've done before this job?
So that was my biggest fear, because following Sandy is very difficult because he just has that command and that presence and just is such a great speaker. So that was the most terrifying part for me. And no, I have virtually no media experience before this role. 1 or 2 little things, but nothing significant. He told me, goes, Dan, I wasn't very good at the beginning. I got good. And I built that skill. So I'm just trying to stay connected and be true and honest. And I will not try and use any dollar words, because I then might stumble and stammer.
And mispronounce them, which is what
exactly.
I do. When it comes to working with volunteers, I know I've had the opportunity to work in various organizations where volunteers are a crucial part of the operation. How is recruiting volunteers at your shop these days?
Yeah, so volunteers are so important for us. We're a full-time staff of 6, and currently our volunteer staff is 60 right now. We're up to 60 again. Pre-pandemic, we were just over 100. So we've dropped, but we also need to keep that space as we've got, social distancing and things like that we're trying to meet. What the wonderful thing is, we don't have to work too hard to recruit. It's wonderful. Everyone wants to help. We often have a list of people to go to that we have more people interested than we have positions. So it's nice to be loved, and it's really nice.
And it's nice to be able to recruit easily, I'm sure.
It does makes life so easy, because like I said, without our volunteers, we can't do what we do. And having them readily available, people need to change, and we understand our jobs are kind of physical. So sometimes people get into it and go, you know what, that bothers my arthritis, or that bothers my back, or whatever we understand. And so having other people to go to is just, it's wonderful.
Let's talk a little bit about the bank itself.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure people in town have heard about the bank. They may not know its origins and how it all got started. So let's do a little bit of a brief review as to how the organization got started.
Sure thing. So we've been around a long time now. We're in our 37th year. 1984 is when we were created. The Sisters of the Religious Hospitallers of St. Joseph founded us in a down economy because they felt the Kingston needed more help. They found us expecting we'd be around for a couple of years. And like I said, 37 years later, we're bigger than they ever could have imagined. And so what we primarily do is we build food hampers for the community of Kingston, and those are neighbors in need, as we like to call them. If they have a need, they just call, book an appointment, come pick up a hamper. We also, some things that people don't know is we share with other meal providers and other food banks around town. When we have extra, or when we have something comes in that we can help, we think we can help someone else with. Last year, we shared a little over 32,000 pounds of food with other meal providing agencies on top of our 11,000 plus food hampers we distributed.
Now, as the organization grew, the
Mhm.
need grew as well, and you had to move from one building to your own building.
Yes.
And then this person by the name of May Bowles Gibson appears.
hmm
Tell us that story.
Uh, so May Bowles Gibson, we didn't know of. We honestly didn't know. So when we moved into this location on Hickson Avenue, she she must have been a fan of ours because we really hadn't known that she was a fan of ours. And when she passed away, she left us enough money to pay our mortgage. So we've been mortgage free at this building since I've forgotten the exact date, but it's in early 2000s,
Mhm.
which is wonderful. Not having to pay rent or mortgage. It makes life so much easier as an organization.
That's one less bill you have to worry about.
Exactly.
You mentioned the word hampers before, so let's talk about what is in a hamper.
Yeah. Our food hampers are picture a big food box, essentially, and you've got your non-perishable food, so your spaghetti, rice, pasta sauce, all those kinds of things. Plus, we also have fruit, vegetables, eggs, milk, and meat in our hampers. We essentially are providing food for a week, whether it's one person, two people, or a family. When you come in, you're picking up a different size hamper based on your household.
Mhm.
And in 2020, we helped just a little over 3,000 households in Kingston.
How many of those are you distributing in a week?
So in a week, we're about 60 a day. So I've got to do my math. I know we're 1,100 a month. And I also know we're about 90,000 pounds a month, which is kind of crazy when you think about, an average SUV. So you're talking 25 average SUVs. So it's the numbers compound fast.
I've been in your particular location years ago with a group of scouts or cubs or whatever,
Great.
and I can remember the layout of the place. And there is still, even though it's a bigger building, there's still it's pretty tight if you get in a lot of food at any one particular time.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we're trying to figure out how we can free up space, particularly in this world of COVID, where we need more space for our volunteers to come in and work and make sure they're not too close together. It's 7,000 square feet sounds like a lot until you start putting food in it and you start trying to do activities in there and food hampers and everything else. So it can be very tight in here. You're right.
Let's talk a little bit about the kind of client that comes to the food bank to get some food. Do you have an overview of who's coming to the bank?
Yeah, we do. But one of the things I think it's important for everyone to know is it can be anyone.
Mhm.
We do have regular clients. Of our 1,100 clients a month, 250 to 300 are regular clients. We see them pretty well every month, but the rest are all floating. So it could be, someone's got a recent layoff they weren't planning for. There's, shortage at work. There's a large electrical bill due for, hydro and heat and things like that. So it really kind of bounces around. One of the things that I think Canada can be very proud of is that we have social services safety net. But one of the things we need to do is we need to update it. It's still falling behind. So about half of our clients are in some form of social safety net or program, which is wonderful that it's there, but it's obvious that it's not enough when we see that many clients. One of the things that I think people also should know is that in 2020, 3% of our clients worked part-time and another 3% of our clients worked full-time. So we've got 6% of our clients in the workforce who can't make enough to
Feed themselves.
feed themselves. Exactly. So food insecurity has been an issue for a while. It's become a buzzword, for lack of a better term, more recently. And with the pandemic, the spotlight's been shone on it very brightly. So it's I guess it's really important for everyone to realize that there's many out there who are only one or two paychecks away from needing the kind of help we provide. And that's what we're here for.
Mhm. You mentioned the pandemic. And I'm curious to know, you talked a little bit about how it impacts the volunteers and the spacing that's required inside the bank to sort stuff
Mhm.
and have stuff ready to go. What other sorts of things has the pandemic done in terms of food donations to the bank?
Yeah.
Has that changed at
Uh,
all?
yeah. So I'm food donations last year during the pandemic were near record. Might have been a record. We kind of lost track. It's so close. It was huge. Monetary donations were also a record. So I've always loved Kingston, and working in this job just makes me love it more because there's just so much caring and sharing that we see, and it was wonderful to see that, and it was a huge help. When we talk about what changes we had to do during the pandemic, we chose to close our building to our clients and have an outdoor pickup to keep our volunteers, staff, and clients safe. So trying to keep as much fresh air around and as much space as we could. So that ended up costing us like $25,000 or $30,000 because we had to put in pickup windows into our building, which weren't there. It involved concrete block and structure work. But now we have windows where our clients, so we can process them very quickly so they're not outside long periods of time, and keep things moving. And unfortunately, we're going to be using these for some time yet, as we've seen now in this third wave.
That's the kind of thing people don't think about, is these little changes that cost a lot of money to
Yeah.
incorporate.
Yeah. I have great ideas. I find they're all expensive.
One of the things I'm curious about is where your money comes from. You get donations, cash donations from folks. You get money from the city or from the province or from the federal government, or?
So last year during the pandemic, for the first time ever, the federal government gave every food bank in Canada some funding, which is wonderful. It meant we could spend that money on things like windows and doors and PPE, upgrades and updates that we needed, and we could use our donor dollars for food and for things like that we need. But before that, it's all based on Kingstonians. So it's, again, very important, that neighbor helping neighbor. So we get our money from everyday average people in Kingston, and the food's the same way. We don't receive provincial funding or municipal funding. And the only funding we ever receive from a government would be grants outside of last year's special.
Now, when you talk to your supporters, so these are people that you would like to come by and donate food or write a check to help support the organization. How do you talk to them? How do you communicate with them? Is it social media the way to go these days with communicating?
For us, it's the cheap way, because we as a charity are really careful with what we spend our money on, and we're quite proud of the fact that I can't remember the exact, but I think it's 94 cents of every dollar goes to back out to our clients. We're not spending a lot on marketing, or we're not doing anything like that. So it has mostly been social media. Pre-pandemic, I got to go speak to groups and talk about what we do and how we do it. During the pandemic, I've had the opportunity to do some online talks to classes in schools and college and university, and I've enjoyed that. It's an interesting. Fortunately, everyone's getting quite good at this, so there's a lot of back and forth, because I don't do well as a lecturer. I need questions.
And you go out and buy the right kind of microphone to have these conversations.
You have to be, yeah. Mine's not as good as yours, I don't think, but it's important to be able to be heard and hear everyone. So, and I guess what we tell our donors is, whatever you choose to donate, we didn't have that before you donated it. If you prefer to donate food, I understand. If you want to donate money, that's perfect. We buy in bulk, so if you donate money, we're typically buying things by the pallet. So typically we're getting a better price than what most people are getting with that bulk buying. So we can do more with money, but I do appreciate that some people want to hand us food. And I know I've talked to some people with their kids, and they like to go out and shop and show their kids what's an important item to donate to a food bank, and then they can physically feel it and see it and learn that lesson. So we understand that donations come in many different forms. We appreciate that. If everyone's looking for a safe and easy way, it's kingstonfoodbank.ca. Do an online donation. You're safe in your own home. You're not taking food from grocery stores that may need it. As we saw in the spring was difficult for people to donate food for us because they're struggling to get enough for themselves with the runs on everything. So, but whatever is donated, we didn't have that before it came in.
You mentioned the generosity of Kingstonians.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the impact that the pandemic has had on that. Now, they've been very generous to the food bank, but there have been other organizations in town that do something similar to what you do in terms of food insecurity. Martha's Table is one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Lionhearts is the new kid on the block, if you will,
right,
who started off gathering food from different outfits around town and then ended up or has been providing cooked meals for folks as well.
Right.
What kind of relationship do you have with the other organizations like that in town?
Yeah. So when I spoke earlier about the 32,000 plus pounds of food we donated last year to other organizations. So that's like Lionhearts, St. Vinny's, Lunch by George, Martha's Table. Whenever possible, we try and help them all. A couple of times we were able to help Lionhearts because we received a donation through our provincial counterpart, Feed Ontario, and it was sent to us in error. It was a commercially packaged, which it's very difficult to hand somebody 40 kilos of fish in a box. So, that wasn't really working well.
Through a window.
Yeah, through a window catch. And so when we reached out to Feed Ontario and said that there was an error, and they said, was there any way it could be used in our community? And we said, yes. And so that was an entire pallet that we sent to Lionhearts as one example. So sometimes it's stuff that comes in that it's just too difficult for us to manage. And then there's great places like Lionhearts and St. Vinny's and Martha's and Lunch by George who are doing these bulk meals, and they love to get a case of fish that they can cook up for the day or a case of this. So we really work quite well together. Lionhearts in the past, when they were, they brought us food when they were collecting, before they got into meal making and using so much more, they'd come to us with pallets of food to share. So I think it's really important for the community to understand that Kingston, from what I hear, is quite unique in that we're very collaborative. And we really work together, and we all want to make sure that those who need help are getting it. And we're not getting in each other's way. We're really trying to help and not trip each other up.
Trying to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
As it relates to the people who need it.
Right.
I noticed via social media, Lionhearts is on there quite a bit. And I noticed that whenever they have a fundraising campaign, they don't seem to have any trouble reaching their goal, which again testifies to the generosity of the people who live in this town, which
Agreed.
is a good thing. Get 30.
Yes.
I saw something about that, and I have not heard about that. It took me a while to figure out what the Get 30 was all about. Then it dawned on me. But let's explain to people what that's all about.
Yeah, so Give 30 is the program that runs during Ramadan. It actually runs a bit beyond that. And it's the Ramadan's 30 days, so it's about giving money during the 30 days of Ramadan. And the Islamic people and society are very giving and want to help their neighbors. And so it really connects quite well. This is the 8th year it's been running. Last year, they had a record of $16,000 plus raised. Very supportive, great community giving opportunity. And this year, it's chugging along really quickly. So I don't want to put any pressure on them, but I think they're going to beat last year's record.
I know it's nice if I get the name right. It's Give 30, not
Give
Get
30.
30.
Yes, Give
Yeah.
30.
Sorry, my apologies. I noticed it too because Dr. Mona Rahman is the co-chair of that particular campaign, and she was someone who appeared on this podcast as well. So that's what sort of tweaked me into mentioning that to you. So it's nice to see different groups in the community coming together with different ideas and different influences, and that's a good thing.
It's so important for us because, to be honest, I couldn't count how many events are run in a year. We're responsible for only a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's our community that's putting together these events and running them, and we're the benefactor, which is wonderful. As I said, the six of us don't have the time or ability to run these hundreds of events that happen. So it's so wonderful when she steps forward to do stuff like Give 30, and everyone else steps forward with all the different events that happen every year.
Now, where do you see the organization going when the influence of the pandemic starts to fade?
So I'm not 100% sure. I would love to say we're going to go away and we're going to close our doors.
Mm-hmm.
That's everyone in the food bank world would love to be out of a job. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
With an economic event of the pandemic, so we've got all these layoffs and all these businesses closing and whatnot. Usually, food banks see a heavier tail end to this. So right at the beginning, I'm assuming everyone's using up all their savings and all their connections and everything, and then it gets into it a little farther down, and they start seeing more. They have problems and they need help.
Yeah.
Right now, we're running about just under 2% over last year's numbers, which were kind of low. So that's a unique. But what I'm most concerned about is our new clients. So brand new clients to the food bank is nearly 13% this year alone. So it's only a matter of time that that creates a big bump in our numbers. If it continues, it's a little unnerving, and we'll need more community help.
And we'll need more support from the government from their end and some of the programs that they have been running to help people get back on their feet after this pandemic disappears.
Yes. CERB was wonderful last year. I think it's, there's some people who are criticizing it, but it was wonderful. Without CERB, food banks would have been buried, to be completely honest. We would have just absolutely been buried. Really, what you see in the US is a demonstration of what happens when you don't have CERB. So our CERB really helped people go out and buy their own food and maintain their own households, and that's wonderful. So there's talk about a guaranteed basic income. CERB proves it works. It's up to the rest of the smarter minds to decide how that would work on a longer term.
Have to develop some political will.
Definitely political will. I'm not sure how much political will there's going to be, given that the pandemic was very expensive for the world and for governments.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if there's going to be the political will to move forward with a new program, but
I'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will. We will.
I want to thank you very much, Dan, for taking the time to talk to us today. And it was nice to meet you, and all the best going forward.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really enjoyed it. And again, a huge thank you to everyone in Kingston. We can't do anything without you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Dan IRWIN, the Executive Director of the Partners in Mission Food Bank. This conversation was recorded in late April 2021 using Zoom.
The theme music for the podcast is Stasis Oasis, written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of the episodes, please send a note to thekingstonianpodcast at gmail.com. For details on upcoming guests, follow us on Facebook. The Kingstonian Podcast is hosted by Dave Cunningham and produced in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.